It was a safe trip to England. I had made my way to the village of Big Bidiksh. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Anyway, I didn't run into any trouble. So far, my quest was going well. The halflings were very polite and accommodating. The halflings were shorter than the humans, but still a bit taller than myself. In fact, some of the children thought I was a weird-looking child. I found myself at a local tavern called the Wheat and Clover. I also found myself sampling and rather enjoying different ales. The tavern keeper, Brady, seemed to enjoy my company. After some inspiration, being in the form of whiskies and rums, I told him about my project. He thought it was interesting. He asked me what I thought about yak farming. I thought it was a weird question at first, but I told him that I heard Lingland had been the best sheep herders in the world. Brady confirmed, but then he told me why sheep were no longer a resource.
On the outskirts of the village of Brannigan, a shepherd named Tillinoff watched his sheep graze. And by watched, I mean slept under a tree. Tillinoff flew through the sky. It felt good floating amongst the clouds. It was the only time Tillinoff felt free. A noise interrupted Tillinoff's flight. Tillinoff looked around in confusion.
Huh?
Tillinoff fell. Tillinoff awoke to a horrific sight. Wolves were eating one of his sheep. Tillinoff jumped to his feet and yelled at the wolves.
Wait. Leave him!
One wolf glared and growled at Tillinoff. He suddenly lost his bravery.
You know what? Never mind. Finish your meal.
Tillinoff backed away. Tillinoff herded what was left of his sheep, at least 5. Tillinoff travelled in silent fear. His wife, Aoiefe, was going to be angry.
She is going to kill me.
Aoife's screams could be heard from outside of her and Tillinoff's home.
I should kill you.
Tillinoff braced himself against a wall as his wife screamed at him. It was a loveless marriage. Tillinoff's father was a shepherd, and his a shepherd before him. He inherited the family business and was persuaded by his family to marry Aoiefe due to her huge tracts of land. That isn't a euphemism. Aoife's family had a lot of land. For 10 years the marriage, was working until Aoiefe discovered Tillinoff's laziness. This was not the first sheep Tillinoff lost. Some had wandered off under his watchful eye. Tillinoff used to be rich in sheep, but he was proof that skill is not genetic.
You're the stupidest, laziest halfling I've ever had the misfortune to know.
Tillinoff grew furious. He wasn't going to take that. She was completely right, but he still wasn't going to take that.
I don't need your flapping your gob at me, woman.
Tillinoff stomped towards the door.
Where do you think you're going?
Tillinoff glared at his wife as he held on to the door.
Anywhere ye aren't.
And with that clever rebuttal, Tillinoff slammed the door behind him as he stormed off. Tillinoff made his way to his safe place, which was the Tipsy Tavern on the outskirts of the village. Tillinoff was on his 3rd ale. The barkeep glared at Tillinoff.
You should take it easy on them drinks, boy. Especially since you haven't paid yet.
Tillinoff sneered at the barkeep.
I've had a bad day. But you just keep on coming. All right.
Tillinoff staggered back home. He stopped when he came up with a genius idea.
Of course. Why didn't I think of it before?
It was morning over Tillinoff's home. Aoiefe was packing a bag in her marital bedroom.
But good for nothing. Paula.
She had packed this bag several times before. But this time, this was the last time. Aoiefe cringed as she heard a familiar voice.
Darling, are you here? I have a surprise.
Aoiefe looked up to whatever being ran the universe.
Give me the strength to deal with this man.
Aoiefe walked into the living quarters to meet her smiling husband. She sneered at him.
You better have a good surprise. One that explains why you were out all night.
Tillinoff had a cocky smile on his face.
That all did.
Great.
Aoiefe looked around. After finding nothing, she gave her beloved a sneer.
Where is it then?
Tillinoff chuckled.
It's outside, silly.
Tillinoff led Aoiefe outside and towards the back of their home.
I've solved our wolf problem.
Aoiefe smiled.
Thank goodness.
Aoife's excitement faded as she met an old Great Dane. It was a skinny, sickly-looking dog that wheezed when it barked. Aoiefe glared at her husband.
This?
Tillinoff nodded in excitement and obliviousness.
Aye, his name is Wolf Slayer.
Aoiefe merely glared at Tillinoff. He became curious.
What? What?
Aoiefe rolled her eyes, sighed, and shook her head as she walked off.
What? He's a wolf killer. You'll see.
Tillinoff looked and smiled at his new guard dog.
Ain't that right, boyo?
Wolf Slayer was in a deep sleep.
He's just resting for work later. That's all.
Tillinoff had brought his sheep to a field for them to feed. Tillinoff found his favourite tree with just the right amount of shade. He lay under it to rest his eyes. Tillinoff had another flying dream, and, again, was awakened by the screaming of sheep.
Oh no.
Tillinoff awoke to find wolves feasting on another sheep. Tillinoff looked around frantically.
Wolf Slayer, where are ye?
Tillinoff saw Wolf Slayer lying on his side, dead. The old dog was slain by a wolf, but time...
Oh, that was a waste of 5 silver.
Tillinoff snuck what was left of his sheep, 3 this time, away from the wolves, and Tillinoff cursed to himself the entire trip.
Ah, damn son of a bitch. Damn it, damn it, damn it.
Tillinoff had stopped and sat down on the path home. He was in no hurry to get a talking to by Aoiefe.
What am I going to do?
Tillinoff found himself talking to one of his sheep. The sheep merely answered by bleating, which made Tillinoff sneer.
Well, you were a big help.
I can help you there, then what?
Tillinoff looked up in surprise to find a rotund man with a black goatee, wearing black robes and a black wide-brimmed hat standing over him. The dark stranger smiled down at the halfling.
Seems like you're having some distress here, then what?
Aoiefe was home alone. She normally didn't mind because it was a moment of peace before the idiot came home. It gave her time to clean and consider her escape plan. However, Tillinoff was taking a while this time. Aoiefe, for once, was worried about her husband.
Where is that man?
Tillinoff and the dark stranger talked.
And those damn wolves keep eating me sheep.
The dark stranger listened to Tillinoff intently.
That is a problem there, then what?
A sly smile came over the dark stranger's face.
Maybe I could help you there.
Tillinoff gave the dark stranger a surprised and excited look. The dark stranger led Tillinoff to a wagon covered in several curiosities. Tillinoff looked at it with awe.
Ye have many interesting things there, Mr.
Tillinoff thought for a moment. The dark stranger simply smiled at Tillinoff.
I think I have the thing for you here, then what?
Tillinoff was going to ask the dark stranger's name again, but the dark stranger turned and walked towards the wagon. Tillinoff ran to catch up. Aoiefe was about to go find her husband.
I hope he's okay.
Aoiefe got about 5 feet from her house when she saw Tillinoff in the distance. She breathed a sigh of relief.
Oh, thank goodness. He's alive.
Aoiefe gritted her teeth in rage.
I'm going to kill him.
A few moments ago, the dark stranger had given Tillinoff a book. Tillinoff looked at the book in awe. The book's cover was made of a strange leather, which felt like his own skin, which led him to believe it was made of...
Nope.
Tillinoff shook his head to avoid finishing his thought. He continued to peruse the strange book. It had no title, but a symbol on the cover. The symbol was the head of what looked like a goat on top of a red pentagram. Tillinoff looked up at the dark stranger.
Thank ye, Mister.
But when Tillinoff looked up, the dark stranger and his wagon were gone. Tillinoff walked the path home with the book in his hands. He read through it, finding many interesting things.
Tillinoff!
Tillinoff hid the book behind his back as Aoiefe got closer. She didn't seem to notice the book. She was more concerned with catching her breath.
Where? Yeah.
Tillinoff panicked for a moment. He hated telling his wife about what happened, especially when she was right, so he thought up the best lie he could, with a little bit of truth in there. He got upset.
Ye listen here, woman.
Aoiefe was taken aback by her husband's sudden assertiveness. Tillinoff continued his recreation of events.
Can't ye see I'm distraught?
Aoiefe was surprised and concerned for her husband.
What happened to you?
Well, not that ye care, but I and the flock were attacked by the wolves. Wolfslayer gave his life to protect us.
Aoiefe looked at the remaining sheep, who she counted in her head. Tillinoff knew what she was doing, so he had to interrupt her thoughts.
The poor boy was outnumbered, so yes, we may have lost a few sheep.
Aoiefe shook her head in disbelief.
Oh, I can't believe that old Matt could protect anything.
Can't ye have some respect for the dead woman? Especially a hero.
Aoiefe was taken aback.
I'm sorry.
Tillinoff waved his wife off before angrily storming past her with his remaining sheep with him.
Leave me be, ye insensitive witch.
Aoiefe felt guilt and sympathy for her husband, which was a first for her. In the bedroom, Aoiefe slept. She slept so soundly that she didn't notice her husband was not in bed with her. Tillinoff pored over his new book in the barn. He was learning so much. Tillinoff had never been a fan of books, but this one was fascinating. This one held so many secrets. This one held power. Tillinoff's focus was on one of his sheep. The sheep merely looked up at him curiously. Tillinoff waved his hands around, muttering under his breath. Then Tillinoff opened his hands and shouted towards the sheep.
Priskorn.
A purple energy surrounded the sheep, which excited Tillinoff.
Yes, it's working.
Until the hum got louder, and the sheep began to panic. And the sheep's panic caused Tillinoff to panic.
What's wrong? What are ye?
Tillinoff was interrupted by the sheep exploding, spraying Tillinoff with sheep gore. Tillinoff stood covered in sheep gore.
That could have gone better.
Tillinoff snuck into the bedroom to check on Aoiefe. He breathed a sigh of relief to find his wife still sleeping. Tillinoff had a sheep cornered in the barn. It had seen what he did to the last sheep, and was understandably frightened. Tillinoff waved his hands over the sheep.
Relax. I know what I'm doing now.
Tillinoff muttered an incantation under his breath. Then he shouted a magic word at the sheep.
Krabande.
Tillinoff was excited to see a yellow glow around the sheep this time. Tillinoff laughed maniacally.
Yes.
Until the sheep suddenly shrank, which surprised Tillinoff.
Huh?
Tillinoff could still hear the sheep.
Sheep? Sheepy?
Tillinoff continued to look around for the sheep.
Here, sheep. Here, sheepy. Where are ye?
Tillinoff found the tiny sheep as he felt his foot step on something. He cringed as he felt moisture and warmth on the bottom of his foot.
Oh no.
Tillinoff looked at the bottom of his foot to find the gore of what used to be the tiny sheep.
Oh God.
Tillinoff read through the book desperately.
Come on.
He had but one sheep left, so he needed the next spell to work.
There has to be something in here.
As if the book had heard his question, it answered him as he came across a page.
What's this?
Tillinoff read the page. It told him how to change prey to predator, but required a blood sacrifice.
A blood sacrifice? Where am I?
A dark, malicious smile came over Tillinoff's face as a dark, malicious thought entered his mind.
Well, she is concerned for the well-being of the sheep.
Aoiefe continued to sleep. It's unclear what woke Aoiefe up. She was quite the sound sleeper. But she did wake up startled. Aoiefe tried to get out of bed.
What the?
She found that she was bound to the bed. She looked up to see Tillinoff standing over her with a malicious smile on his face. He gave her a wave.
Good morning, darling.
Aoiefe looked at the ropes tied around her wrists, and then back at her husband in confusion, fear, and rage.
What's the meaning of this?
Tillinoff shrugged.
Sorry, my love, but the road to success
Tillinoff pulled a knife from behind his back.
requires sacrifice.
Tillinoff made his way towards his wife. She struggled against her bonds, but to no avail. She tried pleading with her husband.
Tillinoff? No. Don't. Please. I love ya.
When Tillinoff got to the bed, he laughed.
Oh, darling,
He lifted the knife over his head.
we both know that ain't true.
He shrugged
But if it makes you feel better,
and brought the knife down.
I feel the same.
Tillinoff chained his last sheep to a post. He had wiped blood all over it and carefully looked through the book. The sheep panicked. Tillinoff glared at the creature.
Would you quiet down? I got the right ingredient this time.
Tillinoff took a deep breath and began muttering an incantation and ended it with a shout. A grey energy surrounded the sheep. Tillinoff looked worried as the sheep panicked violently.
Come on, boyo. Don't fail me here.
Then, suddenly, the sheep stopped panicking and the energy hum stopped.
Wow. That's it? Was there a change?
Tillinoff was surprised by the ordeal. The sheep was surprisingly calm now. This calm unnerved Tillinoff. He looked into the sheep's eyes, which were bright red now.
Well, you're very creepy now.
Tillinoff shrugged.
I'll worry about it in the morning. I need some sleep.
Tillinoff went to walk away, but stopped when he realized something.
Oh, yeah. I can't really go to bed, can I?
Tillinoff led his last sheep down the path. He looked back at it. The only sound the new sheep made was its hooves on the ground. Tillinoff was still unnerved, but his excitement over being successful overrode his feelings of unease. He shrugged to himself.
I'm sure it's fine.
Tillinoff stood in the centre of the village, where everyone was cheering him.
Hooray, Tillinoff! What a fella. He's so handsome.
The mayor, a robust halfling, walked up to Tillinoff with a giant key.
For your contributions to the halfling race, I present you the key to the city.
Tillinoff took in the praise and applause, until he heard something else. Tillinoff looked around.
Did any of ye hear that?
Tillinoff looked around with growing concern.
It's getting louder.
The crowd ignored Tillinoff and continued to cheer. Tillinoff started to panic as he saw several wolves coming up over the horizon. He pointed and shouted.
Behind ye! Wolves!
The crowd continued to ignore and cheer Tillinoff.
You daft fools, look behind you!
The crowd continued to cheer, even as wolves attacked some of its members. Tillinoff screamed at the crowd.
Look, damn it! Look!
Tillinoff watched in horror.
Ah!
Tillinoff woke up to a horrible noise. But the horror wasn't wolves eating Tillinoff's sheep, per usual. but it was the other way around. The sheep had rows of razor-sharp teeth as it roared. Yes, roared. Large, black, bat-like wings protruded from its woolly back as 3 large green tentacles grew from deep within the wool, choking wolves. Tillinoff watched in amazement and horror as the other wolves ran off. While the tentacles of the sheep squeezed the captured wolves until bones broke. Tillinoff watched aghast as he slowly made his way towards the path.
Please don't see me. Please don't see me. Please don't see me.
Unfortunately for Tillinoff, the sheep's red eyes caught his. Tillinoff was paralyzed with fear.
Hey, friend. Nice job on the wolves.
Tillinoff and the sheep stared at each other in uncomfortable silence.
Well, I'll leave you to it.
Tillinoff continued to make his way back to the path as the sheep continued to stare at him. Then, suddenly, the sheep charged towards Tillinoff, who screamed in horror at his experiment that went horribly right.
No!
Another herd of sheep were grazing. When Tillinoff's sheep came upon the new herd, he had already satisfied one hunger with wolf and Tillinoff meat. He had other appetites as he got the scent of the female sheep. A big, toothy grin came across the sheep's face as he made his way to join his sheep brethren.
After a few days at the inn getting over my hangover, I made my way out of Lingland, bidding my kind halfling hosts goodbye. As I made my way south towards Schunskreg, I saw some sheep. I quickly made my way past them without getting their attention.